Most detransitioners are now women in their 20s who have suffered permanent damage, including painful sexual intercourse, inability to orgasm, broken voices, 5 o'clock shadows, feeling like a freak, extreme anxiety, knowing they may be infertile and or never nurse a baby, depression and anxiety regarding their poor long-term health due to years on toxic levels of testosterone. Every detransitioner was a gender dysphoric youth who fell prey to social contagion and doctors who pushed them to transition while ignoring their histories of mental illness and traumas up to and including sexual abuse, which predated and likely caused their gender dysphoria. This past October, 2 lawsuits were filed against Rhode Island providers by detransitioners who are suffering worse now than before they transitioned. And we can expect a surge of similar, well-warranted medical malpractice lawsuits. Thanks to a whistleblower in the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, also known as WPATH, the world learned this week that Dr. Joyce Asler and her fellow WPATH health professionals knew that by an average age of 32 years old, 27% of children transitioned young with puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and surgeries express regret over sacrificing their fertility. And a recent study out of Finland proves that suicide in trans youth is due to unresolved mental illnesses, and that gender reassignment does not reduce suicide. So yes, we are only seeing the tip of the regret detrans iceberg. 7 international studies of the highest scientific quality conclude that gender transition in minors is experimental at best. Risk of harm to youth from transition is high. Youth placed on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones face elevated risk across their lifespan, including but not limited to infertility, bone loss, blood clots, stroke, heart attack, cancers, and more, including suicide. The UK, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland have restricted medical transition in minors to clinical trials and mandated psychotherapy as the first line for minors with gender dysphoria. The physician inventor of the lobotomy received the Nobel Prize for Medicine in 1949, and the practice of lobotomy was not repudiated until 1967. The state of Rhode Island has no interest in protecting gender experts who are the equivalent of yesterday's expert lobotomists. Rhode Island has every interest in giving every harmed patient their day in court. Vote no to SB 2262. And again, these are the words of Dr. Michelle Cretella. Thank you.
Transitioning is easy. We all know that there are no guardrails for a patient. All that she needs to do is to state that she's transgender and tell the doctor what she wants to do with her body, whether she wants testosterone, her breasts removed, her ovaries removed, or something else. The doctors just merely affirm and the insurance companies pay. And when she changes her mind, she is abandoned. When we talk about marginalized individuals, no one is more marginalized than a detransitioner who is a perpetual medical patient. Insurance carriers should not be able to facilitate gender intervention and then walk away when the detransitioners need them. I want to quickly tell you a story about Abel. Abel was a man, is a man. Abel thought he was a woman. After one phone call, Abel got approved for breasts. Abel got his breasts, no problem. Abel then addressed his mental health issues and wanted to get rid of those breasts. It took him over 2 years to get the insurance carrier to cover that. It took him one phone call to add those breasts to his body, and 2 years to remove them. This should not be happening. Richard is a black man who lives in San Francisco. Richard is straight. He was sexually assaulted his entire childhood. Richard's mental health background was well known by the doctors, but they still removed his penis and inverted it into a neo-vagina. That wound never heals. He is racked with infections that no doctor knows how to treat. He is sent from ER to urgent care, back to the gender clinic, and no one knows how to help him. He is 29 years old and he no longer wants to live because he knows what his future looks like. So I implore you to pass this bill. Thank you so much.
All right. My name is Miriam Grossman. I am a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, author, and senior fellow at Do No Harm. I have been taking care of patients for 45 years. I'm going to use my time to respond to Dr. McNamara. First, I'm struck by her use of the phrase, sex assigned at birth. Sex is not assigned at birth. Sex is established at conception, and it's recognized at birth, if not earlier. Dr. McNamara claims that her views are science-based, but to claim that sex is assigned at birth is without any scientific basis whatsoever. Its language misleads people, especially children, into thinking that male and female are arbitrary designations and can change. That is simply not true. Dr. McNamara claims that social and medical interventions are the only evidence-based treatment and that scientific evidence shows it is life-saving. Without it, she's warning us, kids will commit suicide. Well, a growing number of countries have effectively banned the care to which she's referring. And thank God there's been no wave of suicides or other mental health catastrophes. 3 years ago, Finland placed strict limitations on medical interventions for minors. Sweden did the same thing after a 14-year-old girl was found to have osteoporosis and spinal fractures from puberty blockers. An investigation concluded, quote, the risks of anti-puberty and hormone treatment for those under 18 currently outweigh the possible benefits. The UK conducted a review and called the evidence very low. They've also placed severe restrictions on the care that Dr. McNamara calls life-saving. Norway also analyzed the data and has made similar changes in policy. The National Academy of Medicine in France warned, quote, great medical caution must be taken in children and adolescents, given the vulnerability of this population and the many undesirable, even serious complications the therapies cause. Doctors in New Zealand and Australia have published similar statements. Is Dr. McNamara suggesting that all these countries are rejecting evidence-based treatment and placing their kids at risk of suicide? Regarding that point of view, Finland's gender expert, Dr. Rita Kaltiela, said, quote, it's purposeful disinformation, the spreading of which is irresponsible. All 7 countries, and Florida too, of course, concluded that kids don't need their development interrupted, the girls don't need their periods stopped and their voices lowered, and the boys don't need to grow breasts. What they need is psychotherapy. I have other objections to Dr. McNamara's testimony. She insists that her position, only hers, represents standard medical care. What she doesn't want you to know is that there is no standard. There's a debate. There's a fierce debate. And on the side opposite her stand such prominent figures as Stephen Levine, Kenneth Zucker, Paul McHugh, and James Cantor, among others. These doctors are giants in the field. They have been treating transgender patients and gathering data and publishing papers about them, and I mean no disrespect here, but since before Dr. McNamara was born. The point is that those veteran clinicians and others who have wisdom and experience are ignored because they disagree with the current narrative. They're against medical interventions for the same reason those 7 countries are. There is no evidence of long-term benefit, but there is evidence of harm. I'll end by quoting Jamie Reed, the courageous whistleblower from the Children's Gender Clinic in St. Louis. I believe that that hospital receives the medical education funding that we're discussing today. She said that doctors at that clinic said, we are building the plane while we are flying it. We are building the plane while we are flying it. That's how they described the treatment at their gender clinic. Our precious tax dollars should not support such a perilous experiment. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Gabrielle Clark. I find lawyers for detransitioners, and never has a detransitioner ever said to me, I wish I had less sexual function. I wish that I still had my scars. I wish I was still deformed by mutilation, by a doctor, by a lie. This book is a road map to that nightmare. There is WPATH information in here talking about Tanner Stage 2. Do you know any middle schooler that knows what Tanner Stage 2 is? I don't. You're introducing this nightmare to your children. And when they find me later, I'm going to remind them how it got here, how this happened. I'm going to be there as a historian to take note. Half the detransitioners in this country, I found lawyers for. You do not want this life. You do not want this problem. Get this book out of your schools. Get it out of your district. Get it out of Texas, period. You don't need this. I teach parents how to bring their children back from social transitioning, just like I did for my own daughter. She is healthy. She is happy, completely and fully intact, never medicated. She is free to decide for herself what she wants for her life without anybody else sticking their nose in her business, without anybody else giving her ideas, not even me. And I can tell you, she's my daughter, so I can't tell her nothing. She does what she wants to do. She wants to live free.
There are 0 studies that prove that affirming a person with a trans identity prevents suicide. The only data we have tells us that transgender population has higher rates for suicide, and this is true. Because people who identify as trans do have coinciding mental health issues such as trauma, attachment issues, autism, and depression. The trans community even admits this in their data reporting and in their marketing, because they have a special flag for trans-identified autistic kids. They would say this flag is for inclusivity. I would say it's to recruit vulnerable kids. Data aside, let's think about this from an ethical standpoint. To tell vulnerable kids that they will kill themselves if they don't get what they want is a horrible thing to do. All this suicide talk is against everything mental health professionals ever stood for, and it's plain irresponsible. We are setting kids up for a life of emptiness because they are getting the lesson that they must blackmail kids, but they must blackmail people with suicide threats to receive love. When we reinforce this suicide myth, we are telling children that we don't believe in their ability to handle problems. In addition, they start to believe that they must go through painful surgeries or die. This is a very scary message to give on repeat to children. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Erin Friday. I'm a Democrat and a licensed attorney. I'm a lead of a parent group called Our Duty that is fighting against the transgendering of children and young adults. My daughter believed that she was trans after a public school brought in a consultant to teach students that they could have a female body and a male brain. That is not based on science. I pulled her from the school, and she is now happy in her natural body. Since that time, schools have been growing more aggressive in their indoctrination of students, reading books about gender identity to kindergartners, planting the seed that they could be born in the wrong body, a physiological impossibility. Schools are priming them for a future of drugs and surgery to correct a fictional anomaly. The first lawsuit in California was filed this year, Conan versus Freckles. It was filed against a school that secretly indoctrinated a young girl to believe that she was transgender. The teachers belittled the parent for not accepting that the daughter was now their son. One of those teachers had a daughter who transitioned. This is emblematic of the cult aspect. Teachers do not have the right to foist their anti-science ideology on students. Teachers do not create a safe space for students by telling them to keep secrets about their newly adopted gender identity from their loving parents, or by distributing binders, a medical intervention, to girls without having a medical license or parent consent.
Thank you. Thank you. Your time's expired. Thank you.
Good evening, Board. My name is Jennifer Kennedy. I'm an attorney, and I'm speaking on behalf of Our Duty, nonpartisan, non-religious group of parents safeguarding children. Board, I gotta say, and everybody in the room, I must say, I'm so excited. My esteemed legal colleague, so glad to hear there is no law. You will hear opponents of this measure say there's a law requiring teachers to lie. You will hear there is a law requiring these parent secrecy policies. There is no law. No one can cite it. They continue to say AB 1266, and there's no citation to law. So every argument we're hearing about the board exposing itself to lawsuits, that is false, and you can put that to rest. Now, I will tell you where there is law, and that law is Ed Code 51101. That's the law that enumerates the things that schools should be telling parents about, and that is, as another one mentioned, absences, truancy, risk of retention, etc. We have to tell parents about that. This is no different. This policy seeks additional notification when there is a behavior.
Time is up.
Thank you.
Nick Wilson, followed by Kelsey Robertson, followed by Andy.